to live stream. Not quite there yet. Okay. To live stream. Okay, we're now live.
Thank you. Where is the time? No, we're just about there. Good evening, members, and any very brave members of the public, if they happen to be watching us online. To the Employment Committee, we are all present, I believe, but Mrs. Willis, any apologies for absence that I've missed?
Thank you, Chairman. No, you're quite right. All members of the committee are present.
Fine. Now, I wasn't last time, but we have the minutes. Can members approve the minutes? And then I guess, do I sign them or does Cliff sign them as the chair at the time?
It would be you, Councillor Dugan, as the chairman
Okay.
of this meeting who would sign them, even though you weren't present at the previous meeting.
Well, I'll take the chorus. You can't really have a chorus of thumbs up, but nonetheless, I can't think of a better word. So I think the minutes are approved. So declarations of interest. I am not seeing any. Oh, I am. Councillor Tapper.
Yes, just the usual one, a reminder that I am Vice Chair of the Joint Staff Consultation Group.
I don't think you really need to make that declaration. It is a known fact to the Council, but there we are. Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans.
Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Just to say that I, along with some others on here, also sit on the Joint Staff Consultative Group who have discussed already some of the items on this agenda.
And it is good that you do, otherwise we wouldn't be able to discuss them ourselves. And again, it is a fact known to the Council, but thank you nonetheless. Just on the agenda, before we crack into the rest of it, sorry, are there any other declarations of interest? No. Oh, Councillor Galliford. Do you want to tell me you're on the joint staff as well?
Yeah, precisely the same, yes.
Brilliant. You don't need to do it either, Sharon, so just saying, but there we are. Agenda item 12 has been deferred at my request, and I hope we'll come back to the next committee, which is on the 25th of March, if my memory serves me right, which means we won't need to go exclusion of press and public because there are no exempt items. So item 4, the grievance policy and procedure for statutory officers and non-statutory officers. So this is an update. We've already reviewed this as a committee, even though the committee is relatively young. I guess it was one of the first things that we sought to look at. But there are some changes in there really now that we're using the policy, mostly around wording, as you'll see. There's a tidying up around the number of days and the terminology around the number of days. And then there's a piece around calling the subcommittee the subcommittee. Any comments or questions on that paper? Let's see what we nothing from anyone? Oh, sorry, Cliff, when you go, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Am I imagining this, or is a lot of what we are looking at today what we looked at yesterday? It is, isn't it?
Where did you look
In
at
the
this yesterday?
in the Finance and Performance and Finance Committee, because there are documents here that were identical, as far as I can tell. Or is it? Am I going crazy?
I think you might be going crazy. You are looking at the Employment Committee agenda.
Yeah, this one here. Yep.
I
Sorry.
claim to
Forget
have.
I said anything.
I claim
but-
to have. No, you and I reviewed these with the officers as at the chairman's briefing at the start of the week, but I would be very surprised if these were discussed last night.
That's probably what I'm talking about then, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Carry on. Regardless. Thank
So
you.
yes, you are going crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. But,
Well,
at
do
least we've
that.
worked out how you're going crazy.
Yeah.
So, good. Okay. So there was one issue that I can't remember if I wanted to just raise it up as a matter of discussion in the committee or not. 8.2.2. I know I'm looking at the wrong one. No, I think, well, as I say, I've been through this already. I've been through it with the officers. There are remarkably few changes to the policy, and it really is just tidying up, what was a brand new policy for us a year ago. Now that it's in operation, just tidying up some of the little elements. I didn't really have anything particular on it and was happy with all of the changes made. Does anybody want to raise anything? Otherwise, check what we're being asked to do, but it's probably approve it. Resolve that the revised governance policy for statutory officers and non-statutory CMT officers set out Annex A to this report be agreed. Given that there are no questions, can we have agreement, please? That appears to me to be unanimous. Good. Agenda item 5, where I do have a question I think I want to raise. So this is the disciplinary policy and procedure for statutory officers and non-statutory CMT officers. Similar, again, to the last one, really. We put this policy in place for the first time last year. This is the first time that we've had the opportunity to go through and update it. Again, similar comment around the hearing subcommittees. But again, we did need to get that right. I think we recognised through the process that we went through about a year ago that I think one of the documents should have probably gone to a subcommittee at the start rather than the whole committee. But that would now happen as part of this policy, and a subcommittee would be set up to look at any of these grievances in the first instance. Any questions on the policy? Any points that anyone wants to raise? The point I'd like to just point us to, that I just had a question about, and I just want people to read in particular. So in the policy document, it's on page 34, I think, of the agenda pages, and it's paragraph 8.2.2 and paragraph 8.3.2, where it basically says the same things, but it's just for different officer types, and it's to do with selecting JNC in independent investigators. And I remember when this happened a year ago, we had some concern with the way that the list of independent investigators came forward, and sought, in fact, at the time to appoint a different independent investigator, which is why we appointed a legal firm. I am, Rodney, looking at you. You can't tell that, but I am looking at you as I ask these questions. Do you think 8.2.2 and 8.3.2 are sufficiently well worded and policy that we would want to follow in all circumstances?
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I comment on that, I don't know if it's you, but I think you are slightly cracking up. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I think it's just some of the communication is, maybe it's my computer, but just so you're aware of that in case that is just me. In terms of this particular report, I did send some comments to the Joint Staff Group, which I am a member of. I don't think I had any particular concern about the wording that you have highlighted. I think, if I'm right in saying, Mrs. Livingston will probably be able to update, that I believe this is in fact pretty much the standard practice in such circumstances, so that regardless of what we may think as a council and the processes in place, that this is understood to be the nationally legally correct process. So in light of that, I don't in particular have any wording issues with those. I did have some wording issues with some of the rest, but they have already been updated in the document.
Okay. And I'm guessing that no one else is wanting to leap in and apologies, the crackling or the cracking up is me, I believe. I'm not quite sure whether it's the headset or my computer, but I think it's at my end, and I apologize for that. And if I could plug a different headset in, I would, but I don't have one. So it is what it is. Apologies. I'm not seeing any, Mrs. Livingston.
I just wanted to come back and confirm, Chair, if that's okay. I have looked this up, and it is the standard process, but it does state that if there's a genuine conflict of interest, then that would be a reason for maybe why you wouldn't use a certain investigator that's being put forward. And hopefully that is enough from the point of view of the committee to be able to consider that they then get the appropriate investigator in place.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I kind of knew that the JNC policy was the one that we should be following. I know once again, as I flick past page 37, the disappointment that what very little power one has as the chair of the Employment Committee is firmly taken away at 9.4.1. But there we are. There it was, gone. Okay, right, I better, sorry, flick back. If there's no questions on any of the changes to that text, we, as a committee, is advised to resolve that the revised disciplinary policy and procedure for statutory officers and non-statutory CMT officers as set out in Annex A to this report is agreed. Can I have a show of hands, please? That is unanimous, I believe. Thank you. Agenda item 6. Now, this one, interestingly enough, if my memory serves me right, has no changes, Mrs. Livingston. Am I right in
Correct.
saying that?
That is correct.
Just we need to review it every year, and it's being brought back for our review, but there are absolutely no changes to the document that we agreed last year. So if you
Correct.
have anything you want to raise, I'd like to know why you didn't raise it last year. Right, okay. So the committee is advised to resolve that no amendments be made to the current pensions directions policy. Can I have a show of hands? Again, perfect. That is agreed unanimously. Right, item 7, quite the opposite of item 6. There are more changes in that document than any other. And the reason for that is that it's the consolidation, in fact, of a couple of other policies into a single policy, which is why there's quite so much change to the text. Hopefully none of it, though, is particularly contentious. So I will ask if you've got any questions or comments on the policy. If not, I am not flicking past the front page, and I'm going to read out what we're asked to resolve. So any questions or comments on the fixed term casual and temporary worker policy? Councillor McClafferty.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just get confirmation that all of the changes are simply related to bringing the 3 documents together, and there are no changes from these 3 documents?
Mrs.
Chair, I can answer that if that's okay. The only changes are to make sure that the law, because the law has also changed in a number of places, so that's been updated. But that's the only thing. That's why, as I say, there are a lot of changes to that.
And that was, if I remember correctly from my briefing, was around IR 35.
That included IR 35
which
as well.
took me a very long time to remember what the heck IR 35 was without asking the question and looking like an umpty. But, subcontractors, basically. So, okay. So given that there are no changes other than to keep the policy legal, are there any comments? If not, we can go to a vote. So the committee is asked to resolve that the new policy procedure for fixed term, casual and temporary workers as set out Annex A to this report be agreed? Can I have a show of hands, please? It's unanimous. Gosh, this could be the quickest meeting ever. I put a tie on for this meeting. Took me longer to tie the tie than the meeting's going to last for. All right, okay. I doubt it actually. We do have at least one interesting thing to discuss towards the end. Okay, so agenda item 8, the agile working policy. I have no particular notes on this one. Again, a policy that we agreed last year. Interesting, of course, that a lot of it has come into being for far more members of staff than we would have thought possible 12 months ago. Again, there are not a huge amount of changes to it. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the agile working policy? I see no hands. Therefore, the committee is asked to resolve that the Council's agile working policy as set out at Annex A to this report be agreed. A show of hands, please. Excellent. Another unanimous decision. Now then, we move to the interesting paper for the evening, which Mrs. Livingston, because it's not in the agenda papers I'm looking at. Have I got it on?
No, it's a verbal update, Councillor.
Verbal update from you. Okay, Mrs. Livingston, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is bringing forward the pay negotiations for 21-22. Pay negotiations have been ongoing since sort of November 2020, which is when we normally start the process off, and with a number of discussions and meetings with staff representatives and councillors with regards to what the pay settlement would be. We will then go into joint staff where that is made up of councillors and staff representatives, with a view of then putting forward a recommendation to the Employment Committee. So we needed to have an extra joint staff, which we had this morning, because there were some extra points that we needed to discuss. And it's from that meeting today that I bring forward a recommendation. But before I just go into that recommendation that came from joint staff, I just wanted to just talk us through the process and how that occurred this morning, because as I say, this is an unusual situation, and normally when you put a proposal forward, it's the proposal that gets the most votes that decides whether or not that is the recommendation that is put forward. The difference with joint staff is that the proposal needs to be of equal staff representatives and councillors. So there needs to be an equal number agreeing to that decision. So when I look at the decision that we took today, there were 6 for, there were 3 against and 2 abstained. Now, if I then just break that down, that is 5 staff representatives and 1 councillor for, 3 against and 2 councillors abstaining. The importance for me just to raise this, and it's just sort of important to raise it, and staff representatives have been made aware of this, that because we didn't have an equal number of councillors and staff representatives, that does mean that at this meeting here at the Employment Committee, whilst we will put forward that recommendation for discussion this evening, it does mean that councillors could put forward an alternative recommendation. So I just wanted to make sure that that is known, so that there is a fair process. So I hope I've explained that correctly. I do appreciate that Rachel Willis from Democratic Services is online, and I know she would come in and just check me if I haven't explained that correctly. Rachel, have I explained that correctly before I go into the recommendation?
Yes, Louise, just to confirm that is correct. Essentially, what you were saying was that both the member side and the staff rep side, there needs to be a majority in favour of a recommendation for it to be brought forward. But that's not really what happened this morning. Hence, clarifying that if the member representation wishes to put forward an alternative recommendation, that could be tabled at this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. So just wanted to make sure that we clarified that point. And as I say, we have made sure staff representatives are fully aware of this and they're fully aware of the discussion, and I will keep them informed of this discussion this evening. So the recommendation that was put forward, and I should just add, no other recommendations were put forward. This was the only recommendation, but the recommendation that was being put forward to the Employment Committee was made up of several stages. So I'm just going to read those out. So that no percentage cost of living award be agreed for 21-22. Part number 2, that a non-contractual additional day's leave be awarded to all staff in 2021/2022 to be taken on Christmas Eve, or where the member of staff is required to work on Christmas Eve added to their annual leave entitlement for 21-22 only. Part 3, a non-consolidated payment of £250 be made to staff earning less than £28,000, that's full-time equivalent. And part 4, to note that staff representatives, whilst recognising the current position, wish to see a pay increase for 22-23. So those were the 4 parts of the recommendation being put forward, Chair, and obviously with regards to whether or not there's then debate or an alternative recommendation made. The view being that...
Sorry, can I...
Sorry, I was just going to say, the view being that from this committee, it's a recommendation to full council.
Can I just ask for, not clarification, but probably for you to say again,
Yes, of course.
in the third item, a non-consolidated payment of how much?
£250.
For a salary of
The staff.
28,000 full-time equivalent.
Yeah, for earning less than 28,000 full-time on a full-time equivalent.
And is that £250 then prorated if they're, if they're on a £28,000 salary and they're part-time and they work 2 days a week, then they'll get 2/5 of 250. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or clarification around what the proposal is? Not to discuss the proposal at this moment. I just want to make sure that everyone understands what the staff have put forward as the proposal. Cliff, first.
Thank you. Just a point of information, really. What is the current annual holiday entitlement?
It varies from grade to grade, with it going from 23 days up to a maximum of 28 days. Is that, no, hang on, I've got that wrong. I'm getting myself muddled up with how much service. So basically, sorry, let me start again, my apologies. It starts at 23 and goes up to 25 as a maximum. And then when you have served more than 5 years, you get a further 5 days leave. That's quite standard across so it could be a maximum of 30 days. So somebody could be on a maximum of 30 days leave.
Excluding bank holidays, so 8 bank holidays on top.
Yes.
Okay. Sashi, clarification questions.
Yeah. As I understood it this morning, Mrs. Livingston, there's £250 and the 1 day off during Christmas. Are they combined? It is both of them together. Am I right? So you get the holiday plus the 250.
Yes, that's correct. So if you are somebody earning £28,000 or less, you would receive the day's holiday and the £250. If you earn more than £28,000, you would just receive the 1 day's holiday.
Okay, again, a clarification. I thought this morning conversation was that one day apply to all staff.
Yeah, that's correct. That's yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any more clarification questions? Okay, oh, Cliff, on you go. Sharon, I've
So
got
if
you.
you're on
Right, yeah, I've
30
got you.
days, you would get 31.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sharon?
Thank you, Chair. It was just also to clarify that this morning we did agree it would be a non-contractual additional day. Therefore, it
Yeah.
would be for next year. It would not be carried forward on contracts for any further years.
That's correct. So it's non-consolidated. It's just for 2021, 22.
Yeah. Councillor Jennings Evans?
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify also that for those on 28,000 or less, to receive the 1 day's holiday and the 251 off payment for 1 year would actually equate to more than the cost of living increase.
It depends. The one thing, sorry, Chair, just coming back, if the cost of living varies year to year, Councillor Jennings Evans. So you could say that it would be, but at this point in time, there is no set cost of living rise. That's what we negotiate on a year by year basis. I hope I've clarified that point. Chair, I believe Councillor Jennings Evans wanted to come back, but I'm not sure if I've answered her question.
Please do.
Well, I was just going to say, based on the figures we were given this morning, which I understand was put forward by Councillor Bates, that if you were on the higher level, it would be around 0.8%. And if you were on a lower pay scale, it was more likely to be closer to 1%. Working on those figures, it would work out to more than a cost of living.
Sorry, I understand the
expense.
Point. I apologise. Yeah, so what you're doing is comparing that to inflationary costs, etc., at this current point in time.
Well, it would, of course, render any sorry, we're getting into discussion, but it would, of course, render any cost of living increase next year, in effect, not a cost of living increase, because the consolidated, it's not a consolidated payment. But anyway, that's for discussion. Councillor Mrs. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it make sense to take these two items separately, i.e. to have the ability to award all the staff, no matter what grade or level they are on, a day's holiday, whether you wish to call it Christmas Eve or Christmas holiday, whatever you like, but to close the council offices a day earlier over the Christmas period, and then take the other matter separately, because I think everyone would be in agreement that, you know, the staff do deserve an extra, well, it's for discussion obviously, but to take the two items separately.
I think we'll probably discuss them separately, but they need to be discussed together insofar as that's the proposal that's been put forward by joint staff. Councillor Mrs. Wheeler. Can't hear you. You seem to be on magic double mute.
It's my Wi-Fi, unfortunately. It's all those copper wires round here. I've unplugged my headphones, so maybe that will make a difference. Just means you'll get some background noise. Can I just clarify, please, that actually part of this is a thank you for what the staff have contributed this year. So although we are considering it as a pay increase, I kind of wanted to clarify where my head was. And that essentially what we're saying is that we're not really giving any kind of increase this year at all. What we're doing is thanking the staff, particularly those at the lower end of the pay scale, who tend to be customer facing, not working from home and on the front line, for their input this year. And then all staff, we're actually recognising with the extra days holiday, the additional things that they have had to cope with this year that would be over and above their normal job description. So I just wanted to, I suppose, qualify on that what we're saying is there is no increase this year. But what we are doing is recognising the input of the staff over a very difficult year, and it's a reward and a thank you for that.
Yes, that's choose to interpret your words as you will. I think we're moving from clarification questions now to discussion. So rather than Councillor McClafferty, is this going to be a clarification question?
It's just a quick, more for just requesting information. I guess it is clarification. Is if we give all the grades 1 to 4, everybody under 28k, £250, how much does that cost the council?
That would be, so all grade 4s, 23,750.
Okay, so I think we got all the clarification done, and I will.
Councillor Dugan, sorry to interrupt you. Councillor Bates does actually have his virtual hand up, and he's being very polite.
Virtual hand. Oh, is that in the chat? No, why can't I see it? On you go, Rodney.
Screen, top left-hand corner of his screen.
Thank you. Yes, I did have my virtual hand up because that's what Councillor Deitch had encouraged us to do. But I'm not sure necessarily. I'm not.
I didn't see it.
No, that's fair enough, and I appreciate that. So just on clarifications, because I'm sure you're getting to the meat of this. So it has been mentioned earlier. This was my proposal, so I was the one that made it at the meeting. So and Mrs. Livingston very accurately, I think, reflected the position, and I'm glad that she then went on to explain the split. Actually, I got called away having immediately voted, having realised that situation, and the meeting had then concluded afterwards. So I couldn't then raise that point. But it is true to say that there was not a member unanimity on the subject, but equally there wasn't an alternative proposal either made at the meeting. But I am very happy to propose this. In terms of the specific clarification regarding the cost of living, I think we have to be cautious here. The December customer price indices, I've just checked, is 0.8%, but that is only one of the ways of addressing cost of living, and that isn't necessarily the way that you would actually address it. So when we're talking about cost of living, the way to work it out would be very simply, if somebody's on £25,000 and they're given a £250 increase, or a £250 sum, I should say, that is a 1% increase. So that's the way to work it out. And then people who earn more than that would actually have less, and people who earn less than that would have more. So just for a factual clarification on that. But cost of living, there are different measurements. So I think you need to be cautious around that. And the final thing I just want to clarify is that there are other councils who are considering this, as you imagine. There are a range of things that we are aware of, and there are a range of views, which I'm sure Mrs. Livingston can probably go into if need be, ranging from no offer at all to a percentage increase, and a wide variety of different things. We obviously have local decision making on it, so it is our decision, and I will probably comment more when you get to the discussion.
Okay. I've got one question of clarification as well, and it's just around numbers. So how many people, you've told us what the bill is, but how many people would get the proposed £250, and how many people wouldn't in the council?
So our head count off the top of my head, and Julie's here as well, I think is 284 members of staff. Yeah, thank you. So out of those 284, those on the grade 4, so the 28,000 would be 95 people as at the 1st of April. And those that would be on 24,000 would be 31 people.
And the 24,000, because we haven't mentioned 24,000 yet,
No,
but just
sorry,
so that everyone is aware of what 24,000 is about. Can you just do you want to just elaborate on why you make the comment about 24,000?
Sorry, apologies. Those were other numbers that had been put forward. The 24,000 more specifically came originally from when the Chancellor made the announcement, which was for, I appreciate the national terms and conditions, and we are on local terms and conditions, that those earning 24,000 or less would to receive a payment, and that's where that 24,000 came. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse the point, but that was the other amount that was put forward.
Okay. So can I ask a clarification question then of Councillor Bates? Why then in your proposal did you choose 28 rather than 24?
I can answer that very simply. There were two options presented to the group. The first one was in regard to 24, where there was, I believe, 31 members of staff that were impacted at a cost of 7,000. I think it was 7,875. The option 2 for 28, I believe the figures were something like 93, and I think you've given the figure already of approximately £24,000. My own view, and the reason I proposed that, is because the difference between the two is £16,000. And I have to be honest, from my perspective, bearing in mind the amount of decision making that we will be making as a council on a wide variety of things over the next 3 weeks for our budget, this is one of the lower levels in terms of that. I do think that there is issues regarding the cost of living for staff at that level. I think senior officers is a different matter for reasons that I think we can probably appreciate. That particular level are more likely to have still been frontline working, so they wouldn't have been necessarily working from home and making some savings around that. And I think my own view is that I personally believe that the level at 28 would be appropriate. I am aware there may be some people who think the 24 level may be appropriate, and maybe some think nothing at all. But my own view is that I do think the level of 28,000, which would not, I can't remember how many staff we do have in the council, but I believe that would be less than half or around half, would then get that. And I think that would be very reasonable, bearing in mind the levels of money that we're talking about. And I personally would be more than happy to justify that to my residents, because I think it is worthy and justified.
Okay. So just on the numbers, because Mrs. Livingston gave us them, there are 284 people work for the council. 95 would benefit from 250 quid, which is roughly 1/3. If we awarded, as the proposal requests, for want of a better term, and we made the salary limit at 28k. So I think we've got all the qualification. So I throw it open to the floor for discussion. Councillor Galliford.
I just wonder also, could we have clarification on what the cost to the council would be of giving the extra day's holiday? I purely inquired on this because I think the first time this arose at joint staff, I did ask, how much it would be, and I was told that basically it was more than giving a pay rise. So I just wonder if we could have that qualified.
I'm afraid I don't, Chair, I don't have that figure actually off the top of my head. And I'm not sure if it's something we have worked out. So I have to say I apologise to Councillor Galliford for the fact of not following through on that request, and apologies for that. Obviously, it's different in the fact that it's not actual cash, but appreciate that's not the point. It's obviously lost productivity is more the point that we make with regards to that item. I don't know whether or not whether Julie's able to do me a rough calculation online. I'm probably asking quite a tall order at this point. She's going to have a go at just doing a rough calculation for me. So I will bring that back hopefully later on to discuss.
One day out of a working year of 220 days is just under 0.5%. So it's just 0.5% of the annual salary bill.
Which is quite a lot, given that salaries is our biggest cost. But anyway, well, Mrs. Simmons is beavering away. It's a bit like waiting for the Eurovision results to come through. Right, anyone else wish to discuss the item? Mrs. Wheeler. Do I need to put a time limit on or
no, it's going to be really quick. I'm just going to reiterate again that the reason for the 1 day is a thank you.
and we are looking at Christmas Eve unless everybody else, unless they absolutely have to be in. And I know it's been quite a long time since any of us have had to go into an office to work, or it feels like it anyway, or very few of us have. But my experience of Christmas Eve working is come in at normal time, kind of do a bit until midday. By 2 o'clock, we're all slightly drunk on the alcohol from mince pies, and by 4 o'clock, most of us go home early. So I do appreciate it is an extra day, but the number of staff that will be working effectively, proactively, and 100% in that day, unless we are in a really unusual office environment, is likely, we're not really losing a whole day's productivity, I suppose, is my point. I also wonder whether or not, because I'm kind of getting the feeling from this, that people aren't terribly supportive of giving that £250 to the lower paid staff, whether or not it would be more palatable to reduce that, say, to £200 with the 1 day's discretionary holiday to be taken on Christmas Eve unless they absolutely can't, and whether or not that would be more palatable to this committee to actually move this forward.
You're obviously far more perceptive than I can't say that I've noticed anyone's views yet. All we've had is clarification questions, but hey. Councillor Malvaganam. I do like being able to say Malvaganam. You're still on mute, Sashi, despite efforts.
Apologies. So Alt A is not working on my keyboard. I mean, we had this discussion. I mean, I must tell the committee up front that as Lib Dems, we have not met to discuss this whole policy as a group. So we will be meeting up in this week, or end of this week, on Sunday, to be precise. Depends on where you say end and start of a week. And then we will decide. But just to put everything sort of in line, this is my view. The council, I'm not being, truly I'm not. I do appreciate the amount of work the council staff have put in. Really do. Genuinely appreciate all what they do. They have not been furloughed. I'm being very straight and honest. Whereas the rest of the world has been furloughed. The unemployment is running very high in our borough. Last numbers I saw was in November. It had gone up to 4,529 or something to that effect. It's about 260 or 290% increase year on year. So it is more than anything else, if we start giving to one thing, giving it to all the staff, another thing is picking a few. Yeah, that in itself is not equitable. So my view is that we should seriously consider, this is my view, I stress, is that possibly, well, as far as pay increase is concerned, I'm very clear in my thinking, there should be none, with general pay increase to anybody. Bonus, I'm against it because it's very selective. Whereas a holiday is not selective. It doesn't matter whether you're in CMT or whether you are in the 24,000 less category. It's a straightforward application of a policy, which I believe is equitable. So, and also optically, we are doing the right thing with regarding our residents. We don't know what the budget is going to entail. Only Alan will know at the right time. And we really don't know what the bottom line is. So this is, I stress, my view, but we will not, today we will not be actually agreeing or disagreeing on whatever the policy that's going to be discussed today.
Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans.
I was just going to say that this morning I did actually put forward, although it was purely in the chat, the proposal that we did put forward only the day's holiday on the Christmas Eve, and that from an equalities purpose, we ensure that anybody that isn't an individual that celebrates Christmas, that they would have the opportunity to apply that to their own religious or cultural needs.
Say, I really like that twist at the end there. I think it's deeply unfair that, well, I don't think it's unfair that we get to celebrate Christmas, but lots of the children that my wife has looked after over the years don't celebrate Christmas in the same way that we do, and it always seems a little odd that they are never allowed to celebrate their own tradition. So I quite like that, actually. Anyone else? Councillor Tapper.
Just following up on
Then Mrs. Hawkins, then the
Jennings
Deputy
Evans' comment.
Chair.
Does that mean that those of us who are atheists could claim a day's holiday for each of the holidays that are celebrated by everybody else?
You're not getting a day's holiday, Councillor Tapper. I guess you get Christmas Eve because there'll be a big party on, because most of us will not be, or having the day off. Councillor Mrs. Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. How about a compromise if people don't want to have, for a specific religious reason, they don't want to have it classified as a Christmas holiday? How about having the day of their birthday? I mean, everyone, well, I tend to not celebrate my birthday unless it's a nice present, but have a day off on your birthday. I mean, I know some companies do actually do that.
I'll comment on that. I will comment on that in a minute myself. I've got my views, but
I suppose it could be cheaper for the council to actually close the office. That would be one of the reasons to close the office totally on the Thursday, and so the last day working day would be on the Thursday. But if someone doesn't want to have that day or can't have that day, then they could have it as a birthday instead. It's just an option, really, just to put forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess there's a management overhead with doing that equally with the other one in terms of the other religious festivals, but I do quite like that one because I think we overlook those as a nation. Mrs. Wheeler, I think you were next, and then Councillor Rebecca Jennings Evans, then Councillor Bates.
Yeah, it's just really quickly. It's really where Councillor Josephine Hawkins ended up with at the end, and that is that the cost of giving ad hoc days during the year, from both an admin and everything else point of view, is much, much higher than just closing the office at 5 o'clock on the Thursday night this year. So yeah. I have to say, if it's spread, I wouldn't support it because the cost would be too high.
Okay. Agree, well, not agreed. It's not for me to agree. It's for us to agree. Rebecca.
My point was simply going to be that there was some discussion about, for those who don't celebrate a Christian holiday such as Christmas, that they could add it to a bank holiday weekend.
Admin. Rodney, you're on mute.
I pressed the chat button. I will lower my hand in a moment. I think we've somewhat, at the risk of getting ourselves slightly confused here, inadvertently in our willingness to try and do the right thing. Because I do think everyone wants to value staff, and we're just kind of going about this slightly differently. The issue regarding adding a day's additional leave to everybody, which was actually the staff did request that, but they asked for it to be contractual, so so it would be added for this year, and then it would be consolidated, so for next year. That isn't something I could personally support. I don't know about other members, but the issue with that is I'm pretty sure that would actually be more expensive. And we've kind of alluded to it, because if it's 0.5% of the salary bills, I don't know if the figures are still being crunched, but my guess is that's going to be probably substantially more. And that's leaving aside the admin and potential disruption of trying to arrange different days. The point about religious holidays is a very fair one. But as far as I know, this would be covered by our equalities policy. So if for the sake of argument, a member of staff wanted to celebrate their own religious holiday, or indeed a particular festival in relation to having no faith or whatever, then my understanding is that would be accommodated as far as could be reasonably done within the confines of the service. So certainly if somebody was Muslim, for the sake of argument, wanted to take a day to recognise a religious festival, if the council would turn around and say no, they'd have to have very good reasons to do that, because of assuming the rest of the notice was fine. So this point about religious holidays, I think, is a little bit of a red herring, because I do think the council is tolerant, or I'd be very surprised if they're not, with regarding requests for religious holidays in the same way as flexible working and other policies. The point I am slightly surprised about, I have to say, is the comment made by the leader of the Democrat group, who I have a lot of time for. But on this particular issue, I have to disagree, because I don't see how it is possibly equitable to have a situation where members of staff who are being paid, good salaries in many cases. I'm not in any way decrying the hard work that they do, but at a senior level would actually get more financially from a flat rate than somebody getting £250 at a lower level. And we as a council have quite rightly addressed the issue of poverty this year. And we've done it as a united group. And we have to bear in mind that a number of the staff that we're talking about, maybe not at 28,000, but certainly at maybe grades 1 and 2 that we're referring to, are going to be in that category. They are struggling. And there's no point kind of denying that. And I do accept other people are struggling as well, but I can't solve the entire entire situation of Camberley. And I don't believe that the way to solve poverty is to say, well, somebody else is in a bad position, so our staff that we can do something about need to carry on being in a bad place. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think it's equitable. I don't think it's progressive. And I couldn't support that. So I personally think, yes, it would mean that the lower paid members of staff get a slightly higher than, they'd probably get a slightly higher than the rate of living, but good, because they need to. Because unfortunately, other bills will go up. Council tax, I'm sure, will go up, and a variety of other bills will go up, and they will still have to pay for that. And so I do think those at the very lowest grade members of staff who are frontline working throughout all of this, I do think we should be looking at that. And I make no apology about that at all. And as I've said, I'm more than happy to go out on the streets and defend that if others did not wish to do so.
Obviously in a socially distanced way. Mrs. Livingston, I think you were wishing to make a point.
I just wanted to clarify something on from a staff rep perspective, and just with regard to feedback from staff. Obviously, their preferred option, I appreciate, was the consolidated leave. That was their preferred option, but obviously the recommendation that came forward was the unconsolidated 1 day, and that I just wanted to add and make sure that it was noted that it would be valued that that was on Christmas Eve, and that was feedback that came back from the staff, that if that one-off day was on the Christmas Eve, because that would be valued. As I say, I just wanted to make sure that that just was that you were aware of that.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I did it in like Councillor Jennings-Evans' suggestion, but I think, having listened to the further comment and indeed just thought about the administrative hassle of it all, and the fact that if you had a whole bunch of people who celebrated another occasion or their birthday, they would then need to work in what is an otherwise completely empty office on Christmas Eve, which would probably mean they wouldn't have a huge amount to do. So I do like it, because it does. I've got lots of people who work for me who are, in fact, I have more people that work for me who are non-Christian than are Christian. And I think it's a little of a necklace is that they don't get to celebrate their own festivals, and other than the poor chap in Dubai who does. Councillor Betton.
Thank you, Chairman. To be honest, I'm not too concerned about the cost. Everyone can go up in flames about that, but we're talking about £23,000 here. You'd spend that on a planning appeal. And we do spend that on planning appeals more than once a year. What we're talking about here is symbols. Symbols to staff of a job well done at a time when the NHS is bursting at the seams. Doctors and nurses are working in tears half the time because of the stress, the strain, and everything else. They're not getting money. They're not getting time off. I can appreciate, we'd gladly pay for this. Thank you to the staff. Where are we getting that money from? We're getting it from the ratepayers, with an increasing amount of unemployment, with increasing furloughing, with increasing businesses going out of business. So where are the symbols that we're trying to convey to the staff, but to the ratepayers, to the businesses who pay business rates for buildings that they cannot use because all their staff are working from home? I think we need to think about the symbols the messages that giving these amounts to staff will put. And if it comes down to it, £250 for the work that they've done, come on, it should be a lot more than that, but at a time when we can afford it. And I don't think that time is now, for all the reasons of giving the wrong messages to the ratepayers and comparing our staff, who are doing very well, with the NHS staff, who are not in a position to control anything apart from our lives, literally. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler, I'll come to you in a minute. Just to comment on that, because I did ask some questions really around unemployment, and Councillor Maelvagen mentioned that earlier. The number of people claiming not unemployment benefit now, but universal credit, as it is now called, has quadrupled in the borough since October 2019. It's astonishing. We've never had a massive unemployment problem in the borough previously, or at least the unemployment issue that we've had has been less than those that surround us. You will all have heard that the unemployment numbers in the UK as a nation has gone up to 5%. The number of people claiming UC in Surrey Heath is now 5%. Of the increased applicants that have come to claiming UC, 48% of them were previously business owners. I don't think it's right, and we don't have the stats to back up what I'm about to say, and one has to be quite careful with it. But if you take the increase as being 3,000 and half of them had their own businesses, then 1,500 businesses have collapsed across the borough during the pandemic. We absolutely don't have that as a stat, by the way. We won't get that stat, I don't think, until November, when we get that analysis of businesses. But I guess I'm just trying to sort of put some meat around what Councillor Etten said in terms of the counter argument. I'm actually not necessarily supportive of the counter argument. I'm not swayed either way, frankly, at the moment. But I do totally agree that us offering our staff, who, as again has been pointed out already, haven't been furloughed. They may have had roles that, had they had those roles for a private company, they would have either been furloughed or made redundant. But because they work for the council, we were able to find alternative roles for them. And they were, very gainfully employed. This is what we're all saying. We do recognise the staff have had to work very, very hard, but and it's a difficult one. I'm not, as I said, that's why I threw it open to discussion rather than make a little speech at the start, because I wanted to hear what everyone had to say. But there's my tuppence worth. Councillor Mrs. Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I think that there is a strong difference between our staff and NHS workers. So I don't know how many Facebook pages everyone else is on, but the local NHS hospitals have been very well supported, and rightly supported, by our local community, with all sorts of gifts, all sorts of recognition. I had a case during the first lockdown whereby I was rung by somebody's relative and asked to go and knock on her mother's door because she'd not been able to raise her. And the anxiety that I felt on undertaking that activity was enormous, because it wasn't something that I had been trained to do. Yes, our NHS colleagues certainly did not expect to see the level of deaths, or to look after, if you're an ICU nurse, in some hospitals 3 or 4 patients when normally it'd be one-on-one care. But they're trained to do it. They have trained support within the hospitals, and I've witnessed it and experienced it and benefited from it when I've worked with the trust. And maybe I've just been very fortunate with the 120 odd trusts that I've worked with, that they've just had better HR than others, but I've been well supported. But our staff have been asked to do things this year that they weren't trained to do and they weren't employed to do. So they weren't trained to make those welfare calls. And there's something I know we gave them some support to make it, but when they took the jobs, it wasn't something they were expecting to do, to ring through a list of some of our most vulnerable residents and to face those things that you come across. You cannot help but to take home the despair in some of those calls. And I think if we were to ask any of our elderly, shielding or vulnerable residents whether or not they felt that they had had good service from, on the whole, those slightly lower paid staff within the borough, they would not begrudge this payment. And I think we have asked a lot of people, we've asked them to step way out of their comfort zones, and not to give some degree of recognition for that would be unforgivable.
I get the flip side to that comment would be that there are 3,000 people who are currently claiming UC who would have been delighted to have been paid to make phone calls to our vulnerable staff and didn't have that opportunity. But there we are. Councillor Bates.
Thank you. I think again we're having a risk here of getting involved in divisive discussions inadvertently and well-meaning as it is. And something you just said, and also something Councillor Besson said, slightly disturbed me. I've got to be honest. I don't believe that any of those 3,000 people on universal credit, or any of the tearful nurses, or the stressed shop workers, the reason they're stressed, in my view, is not because they're looking at the council officers and begrudging them a small increase. That isn't the issue. The issue is the way they've been treated. The current situation has been overwhelming for them, and they want something dealt about their situation. The way to address their situation is not to make someone else more miserable, and that's the problem I have with if we choose not to take any action. And I know that we are all trying to find the right solution here, and I do get that. And I do take on board this issue around optics, because I do say that actually it's more about optics than it is about finances. But the issue to me is bluntly this: if we are concerned about council tax, which I'm sure we will be, the impact to this on the borough's council tax will be a few pence a year. I couldn't work it out exactly, but it is literally going to be a few pence a year. If we choose to give nothing, will council tax levels change, the increase that we're going to propose or discuss at the council tax meeting? I do not believe so. I believe we will put forward exactly the same council tax rates, regardless of whether we put this forward or we don't. Now, if you want to put forward a council tax with two proposals, one with this increase and one with possibly 1 or 2 pence extra, or whatever the rate is going to be, have the discussion on the full council. Obviously, we'll do. I don't have a vote tonight. But I honestly do not believe that people are sitting at home and saying those council officers are the ones to blame for the situation that I'm in and the stress I'm experiencing. They're actually blaming a variety of people and no one, because actually a lot of this is no one's fault, the pandemic, and we won't get into the politics around all the rest of it. But that is where people are at, and they want their own appreciation. It's not about what they view about others, and I think we need to avoid getting involved in that and adding to already tense situation. It's about what we can do for our staff in our community.
Councillor Betts, apologies if I may. Just time is marching on, and I think it took 15 minutes to do the rest, and we've now been going for 45 minutes. Mrs. Rachel will be asking us if we want to take a screen break in a minute. I think we've all had an opportunity to say much on this topic. In truth, I can't particularly see a way to bring it to a head without going through the points, but I run the danger then of a cumulative series of yeses, perhaps. But there were 4 points raised by the staff. I think 2 of them are relatively non-contentious. Number 1 was they are not expecting a consolidated percentage award this year, and I think it would be fair to say they're not going to get a consolidated pay award this year. So we can agree to point 1. Am I right, Mrs. Livingston? Have I understood what you said as point 1?
That is correct. I was just going to mention that I don't know if Councillor McClafferty, if you can see, had his hand up for quite some time on the electronic hand, but I'm not sure if you've seen that. Just mentioning it to you, Chair. Sorry.
Where is this electronic hand?
Can you not see him on the screen? He goes up to
I can see him, but I can't see an electronic hand.
His hand on the...
No. Okay. It's not working on my computer. I don't know why that is. Councillor McClafferty, apologies. leader.
Sorry, Colin, can I tell you how to get to the hand?
How I see them? Yeah, go on.
No, it's actually go and press the participants. Can you see the participants at the bottom? There are 17 of us today. Number of participants. I don't know. I use Windows. I don't know what you're using.
I can see the participants now.
If you click
Still
on
can't see
it,
a raised hand. Are there any raised hands at the moment? Am I missing something
now
completely? It's like a
gone.
joke. Can
No,
someone
no.
put a raised hand up so I can see it?
Colin, if you go and press the participants, if you're
I'm there. I've got it. I can see the list of participants.
there you go. Now you've
And
got
the
about
chat
3 of
underneath.
them. Now you should be able to see
look at
3
that.
yellow hands.
I think we should all
All
put
right.
our hands up just to confuse him. Well,
You
even
have.
more so. if we
Brilliant.
can.
Right. Councillor McLafferty.
You putting your hand up, I don't know if that means that you see anybody else's. And I'd just like it known that I sat patiently while 5 other people got called before I did, after I did. Anyway, isn't the discussion actually that both sides are right? Right, the staff deserve a thank you, and we have an obligation to the residents to make the right decisions. And the truth is, the residents will be mixed as much as we are here about whether it's right or wrong to do something, right, in terms of a thank you. I'm with the group that says that the staff have worked very, very hard and deserve recognition. I'm also with Cliff, and you might be in trouble, Cliff, with Council, your leader, when you're not supposed to be making a decision tonight, but you sound like you have a pretty straight view. I come down on that. We've had a terrible, terrible year financially. I mean, everybody, the economy, our residents, this council. We're looking at the budget for next year, and potentially there's a shortfall which is going to have to be made up. Councillor Bates is absolutely right. We're only talking about 24 grand in our budget. That's small beer, but it's still £24,000 that we're spending of taxpayers' money if we're discussing it, right? For me, there was something odd happened. We were along the lines of the discussion was that we weren't going to give a pay rise, and we still felt that the staff needed a thank you. And the way it was deemed to be a good way of doing it would be Christmas Eve is an extra day off. It's not a very productive day, as Councillor Wheeler said. Okay, and that was seen by the staff as something really good. Okay, they understood that there wasn't going to be financial because we're not in a good position economically, the residents or the council. And so it went to, that was what it was going to be. Then it got raised about the giving a one-off payment, and I believe that was something that was discussed or certainly muted earlier. And of course the staff would say, well, can we have both? It's, of course that's right, they would ask for that. Is it right they get it? I understand the argument about the people on lower pay, £250. It's not for me to say whether £250 is important to people or not, but I absolutely get the argument if you're on less take-home pay, £250 is more valuable than if you're on 75 grand a year. Okay. But for me, it comes down to, if we're running the council and we're trying to run it as responsibly as possible, I think that we should be saying the thank you to the staff is the day off. And I agree with Councillor Bates that the whole discussion about religious minorities and whether they take Christmas Eve, that's a management issue. They get a day off. Christmas Eve is the day we're identifying. If it is a problem for anybody, either religiously or they're working that day, they'll get a different day off. But the vast majority of the staff will get Christmas Eve off as a thank you. All right, and we're done then. That's the point is not whether it costs more or not. The point is that it's not monetary. It's not something that's budgeted. This idea that it will cost us more, you have to spend more money to do that. This lost productivity, right, is negligible. Okay, and for me, I'm afraid I've come down on the side of Councillor Betton that I would rather we recognise the staff with what we can do, which is the day off around the Christmas Eve for most people, or flexible for those who need it to be flexible, and I can stand in front of the residents and say, everybody is having a terrible year. All right. Our staff, as it was pointed out, were not furloughed, couldn't be furloughed. All right. Yes, they've been asked to do jobs which are outside their comfort zone. All right. But they're still paid 100% of what they were supposed to be paid. All right. Now is not the time to be making financial payments as little. And I recognize that it is a small gesture, £250. It's a small amount of money compared to our budget. But I believe it's, as Councillor Betton said, it's what the residents are looking for us to do is manage our situation. But I'll be honest with you guys, I see that, you know, if you talk to 10 residents, you'll get 5 who are for and 5 who are against. So this is a judgment call by us as individuals on the employment committee. Can I just say, we're going to make some kind of recommendation, and this is going to be debated again, I imagine, full-throated in the council. All right? You know, once the Lib Dems have had their chance to get together and decide what their joint position is, I'm sure we'll hear it. Right? But tonight, it's a recommendation. If we recommend one or the other, or both, it's a recommendation and it goes to council. And I can see, I'm with everyone else here, I'm struggling as to exactly which side to come down on. But for me, I'm coming down on the thank you that our guys deserve is absolutely true. But for me, it's the day off. It's not the £250, and that satisfies, that's the balance for the residents from my point of view. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to say anything else, or do I go through these other points again? We've got to get to a point at some point whether we're going to decide as a committee to recommend, in effect, that I sense that there's a desire, and I'm now finally getting around to sensing stuff, Councillor Wheeler, I couldn't do it earlier, that we might support the day's holiday, probably without exception, although I don't know. And then we've got to make a decision as to whether we would want to make a payment to the people paid less than 28. We haven't really discussed whether we think there's a that we might want to offer it to people who are paid less than 24,000 instead. We haven't got to that detail yet. But I think we've agreed that there's not going to be a consolidated pay award. In terms of making a response, I don't know whether we need to, Mrs. Livingston, in terms of point 4, that they want to be considered for a pay increase next year. That will be part of the annual process as it is, and that and a pay increase will be considered at that time. We cannot guarantee a pay increase for next year, I think, is a fairly straight but honest answer. So I guess the question is then, do we have is it a unanimous vote to say that we would support giving members, wrong officers, an additional day off on the 24th of December across the board for all officers? Mrs. Wheeler.
Just a thought, could we let the staff decide?
Decide what?
An either or, so an additional day off on Christmas Eve, or I'm getting lots of shaking of head. Okay.
Sounds like a no.
I just don't know what the reason for the no would be. But if I was a lower paid, as to why they couldn't choose either the £250 or the day off.
Chair, could I have a say on that? It's already been through that loop once before. So we are here as a committee to recommend, accept, reject, or abstain.
No, my understanding from the discussion at the beginning was that as there was no real recommendation from the Joint Staff Consultative Committee, we're at liberty to come up with an alternative. Louise, I don't know if you want to just say whether or not I was correct on that.
Sorry, Councillor Wheeler, that's exactly what the chairman was trying to do just now. He was trying to set it out for all of us. Am I right, Councillor Dugan, Chair?
We are, but it's a case of how do we get there? I mean, I guess. if we took a vote, I've done this before and it spectacularly backfired, actually, Sashi, when you voted twice, but which made it remarkably difficult.
Don't worry, this time it's only once.
I'm sensing that there's a
jump in while you're thinking, Chair.
Go on.
Okay. The reason I was shaking my head, Councillor Wheeler, was the administrative burden of trying to do that, going around all the staff and deciding which would, who would take what, when do they decide, can I decide later, all that kind of thing. And also, just again, I'm sorry, we're not, to repeat myself, I know we're not talking about a big decision in terms of financial for the staff or the council or the residents, but it's the if you're going to make a statement about a symbol, then the one thing you don't want is muddy waters. We did this for the staff, and we said no to that for the residents, and muddying the waters for me was just not a good idea. That's why I said no. But I do agree that we could, if we wanted to, come up, I guess, with something totally different. I thought what the chair is doing is right. Do we all agree that we're in favour of giving that? And then it's a simple and or no to whether they get the 250 as well, isn't it? It's that straightforward.
It's one way of going, or we alternatively go with a vote, in effect, vote down the whole hog and then come back to the other way. Hold on, I've got Mrs. Livingston, start with you. Sorry, Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans, I'll come to you in a minute.
It was just coming back on Councillor Wheeler's point about the fact that, yes, you could make an alternative, you can make an alternative recommendation. That is what I said at the beginning of the meeting. I'm not looking to muddy the waters, but I just wanted to confirm that point. Doesn't really help you, Chair, but I'm just sort of stating that could be the case.
Rebecca, before I come to you, just would it make a difference at all? Because it sounds to me like this is a principle thing rather than anything else in terms of whether we pay money or not, given the current financial state of, frankly, the council as well. We have a rather large hole in the budget for next year. Would it make a difference if we looked at the lower group, or the payment to fewer people, because we take the salary limit down to 24,000? Would people who are currently not wishing to pay anything, that would be 31 staff, cost the council £7,000, and you're talking about people who are earning, if my very simple maths are correct, they're earning less than £5 an hour, which is interesting because it's below the national wage, if I understand that correctly. I might have got my maths wrong, by the way. I haven't got the big calculator. It's got. Say again?
We're not paying anybody below the national minimum wage.
No, I've obviously got my maths wrong. Would it make a difference if we looked at that lower amount to councillors who appear not to be particularly keen to pay anyone any money? Mrs. Galliford. Sorry, Rebecca, you were first, and then Sharon.
Yeah, I was just simply going to say, going back to Louise's earlier, Mrs. Livingstone's earlier comment that the preferred option of the staff for the day's holiday was Christmas Eve. I propose that that's what we recommend, and then it's a management decision as to how that's administered for anybody that happens to have to work that day or has different religious beliefs.
Okay, I got the big calculator out, and you're right. The £24,000 a year, £40 a week, assuming a 52 week, is £11.60 per hour. Sharon.
Thank you. Like the rest of you, I am completely and utterly torn on this. This is going to sound like I'm giving you a personal sob story, and that's not the point, but I'm on a low salary. I was on furlough during the summer. I then had to fight to get my contract reinstated, only to have a third of the hours reduced. There's nothing I can do about that. So I have complete sympathy with so many of our residents who are going through very, very similar things. To me, £250 would pay pretty much, a long way towards my household bills for 1 month. So when you're on a low salary, although we're saying 250 is peanuts, if you're on a low salary, actually it's not. So I just want to put that in. Now, from the residents' point of view, of course, if the rates, everything is going to go up this next year, I think food will go up tremendously. And, you know, I'm so torn because I don't know what to do. Like the rest of you, I'm finding this extremely difficult. This morning I voted it down because I thought we were given the option of either a holiday or the 250. Now we're talking about both. So I'm sorry, I'm muddying the water, but what I wanted to say was that 250 is not a pittance to people on a low wage. However, prices going up, you know, it's not going to cover a lot in that respect.
Alan.
Sorry, I'm bumbling now.
Okay.
You feel free, Councillor Galliford. This is a very emotive subject, and it should be. Okay, and yes, £250 is a reasonable sum, even taxed back. It's a reasonable sum for somebody to receive. Okay, but those £250 are going from essentially ratepayers who may have been furloughed or have lost their jobs. Right, so they've lost 20% in furlough, or they've lost their money, or businesses are on less income because of that, etc. You know, the people who are giving us the money to decide what to do with it are also really, really struggling. All right, and that's why for me, it's the balance is, let's give the staff the thank you that they deserve, and unfortunately it can only be the day off. Let's tell our residents that we didn't spend their money giving it to staff. We're going to try and use it for other things that maybe helps the residents and the staff. Okay, that's my view.
Okay, let me
No,
let me tell you what.
We're already at a small number. Making it a smaller number doesn't make any difference to me.
Let me propose what I intend to do. I'm going to take a vote on whether or not we agree that we are going to offer the staff a day's holiday, which will be the 24th of December, full stop. If staff wish to then negotiate with their line management as to why they shouldn't have the 24th of December, should have another date, then that's up to the line management. But the idea is that we close the council doors one day early at Christmas, giving everyone a day off, irrespective of their religious beliefs. And then we're going to just move to a vote on the proposal that the staff have given us. There have been two counter proposals in terms of paying less and offering it to a smaller group, but neither of which, in my observing the conversation, has gained any particular traction. So as long as everyone's happy that we do that, then the first thing I'm going to ask, please, is for the members of the committee, please, to vote on agreeing that we will give staff a non-consolidated single day's leave for this year only on the 24th of December 2021. Can I have agreement to that with a show of hands, please? Now then, oh, screen changes. So that's not unanimous. That is, oh, that's far too difficult. Mrs. Willis, help me out.
Councillor Dugan, we had actually lost Councillor Wheeler while you were voting. I don't know if that makes a difference to what you have just said. She's now back.
I am so sorry. I didn't actually hear the proposal. My internet was
sorry.
I'm just asking, in and out. So
I'm asking the committee to vote on agreeing to award staff a non-consolidated day on the 24th of December. As a first step, I'm going to come on to the money in a minute. Okay. This is just to agree that we will offer a day's holiday, and the majority decision will become what this committee recommends to full council, by the way. So that's, sorry, and so hands again. So voting for is Councillor Betton, Councillor Dugan, Councillor Galliford, Councillor Hawkins, Wheeler, Jennings, Evans, McClafferty. Voting against? Abstaining. Councillor Tapper and Councillor Malvaginam. Okay, right. So, given that, as I say, I haven't seen any particular traction about whether or not the payment is that we offer either a smaller payment, which I think got shot down, or to a smaller number, i.e. those earning up to 24k rather than up to 28k. The only proposal that we have is to vote on whether or not we wish to offer members of staff an unconsolidated £250, for want of a better term, bonus to all members of staff earning less than 28,000 as a full-time equivalent. Can those in support of that please raise your hands? Okay. If I see my screen correctly, that is one, and that's Councillor Wheeler. Those who do not support that proposal, please show your hands. Councillor Dugan, McLafferty, Galliford, Hawkins, Jennings Evans, and abstain. Well, Councillors Mulvagan and Betton and Tapper. So this committee is going to recommend to full council that we offer the staff as their pay settlement for this year an unconsolidated day, which will be taken by all members of staff on the 24th of December 2021, and there will be no pay award to any members of staff. Mrs. Willis, Mrs. Livingston, are we happy? Well, are we comfortable that that is what this committee has agreed and will recommend to full council?
Yes, councillor, that's my understanding. Agreed as well.
Excellent. Thank you, members. Now, given that we are over time, but we've only got one item to go, and I'm rather hoping that it will be a very quick item.
Councillor Dugan, sorry, just to interrupt, you have got Councillor McLafferty and Councillor Jennings Evans wishing to ask something.
Who was first? Councillor Jennings Evans, ladies first.
Virtual hand up, so can't tell you. I can't help you there.
Ladies,
I've got my virtual.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dugan. I was just going to say, can we please make sure that everybody who's on the committee did actually cast a vote in whatever form that would be to, you know, in favour, against or abstained?
I think they did, yeah.
Just to confirm that is the case, the numbers are correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alan.
It's really just a plea to Mrs. Livingston. Okay, this is going to sound ironic given the fact I just voted to recommend that we don't give them a bonus. Okay, but I wonder if you can convey to the staff representatives of just how painful that discussion and vote was, right? And that no matter whether we as an employment committee have voted not to give them a one-off payment, that in no way diminishes that. I don't want it representing that we don't value, right? The argument, we've just spent what, an hour discussing that, and it wasn't because not a single person said the staff don't deserve it. And I just was hoping that you could find a way of conveying that, if the committee and the chair don't mind, you can convey that to the staff representatives.
I'm sure as leader, you could convey that message anyway, leader. Sashi first.
Louise would be happy to do that, actually.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much, Colin. Mrs. Livingston, I echo what Alan just said. There's no way we want to diminish what they have done. We appreciate all what they do. This is a pragmatic view we have taken, given the circumstances. Yeah. In our case, I would have loved to vote either way, but I can't because we have to meet on Sunday to decide.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll make sure that's conveyed.
I don't mean to be flippant on this, but I don't think Mrs. Livingston should write that letter. I think it should be the leader. And irrespective of what has just been done, I think the wording that you've put is fair and reasonable to make. I don't agree with it on this occasion, but that doesn't matter. I do think the leader should write the letter to express the view of the members. I don't think it should be an officer on this occasion. And if the leader of the Liberal Democratic Group wants to write a similar letter, that's a matter for him.
Yeah, Rodney,
but I do think the leader is the leader should perhaps write on behalf of
I was coming at it from the point of view of that I was expecting Louise to feed back to the reps pretty quickly, but I'm more than happy. In fact, I would prefer to actually meet with them rather than write to them. But Louise, can I leave that with you, that I'm more than happy to do that? All right.
I'll organise it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Same again, Louise.
Okay.
After the leader, give him the benefit first.
Agenda item 10, the work programme. Any comments or questions on the work programme? No. Can we agree the work programme by a show of hands? I thought Sashi was going to abstain on the work programme.
Oh,
okay,
boo,
that is carried.
Boo, boo, boo.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. An unusually difficult, but I think good conversation, and I think everyone will understand on both sides the decision that we have reached, certainly on the pay award. But thank you for your time. Good night.